Welcome to In Alignment. I'm Annie.
And I'm Marissa. You were meant to find this today, and we're so glad you're here.
Welcome back to In Alignment. We are so excited to chat with you today. We have a big week coming up where Marissa and I are going to New York for a shift event in Soho, and then we're going to Miami to record the shift, the final version. We actually are also finishing our beta tonight. Wow, this has actually been like a crazy, important, and busy week and next few weeks.
Yeah, I feel like everything that we've been working on in private is sort of like coming to a head this week, where we're going to get feedback from everyone who finished our program. We're going to have our first like big in-person event. And then, yeah, we're going to Miami to film.
So exciting. It's so exciting. I know, it's crazy how quickly time has gone by on this too. I feel like Marissa, I guess we started working together officially in end of December, January.
Yeah, I mean, I will never forget it because I had been really trying to figure out like what my next thing was going to be. And I gave myself a deadline of like, okay, if we don't know what we want to work on and who we want to work on it with, I'm going to find a job. And you and I literally decided to work on this, and the whole idea came together and our partnership came together on New Year's Eve.
That is crazy.
I know, like literally hours before my deadline.
Also, Marissa, do you remember the walk that we decided to be business partners?
Yeah.
This is
the one I'm talking about. What were you going to say?
So we went on a walk it was New Year's Eve, I guess. Wow, that's actually crazy to think about, which was your deadline. I didn't even know that at the time. And we came up with this idea and landed on the idea to be co-founders. And the time that we were walking was like 1 hour and 13 minutes or something like that. And on the phone, both of us had the exact same walking distance or walking time. And that has been the number. Wow, it's actually really weird. I'm looking at my computer right now and I have 13 emails. That has been the number that has just like consistently come up in this business.
Yeah, I'm going to explain this for anyone who's listening and doesn't know about angel numbers. So when you start seeing numbers in repetition, like 1111, 4444, those numbers carry different meanings. And if you kind of subscribe to this belief, you start noticing them more often. And my number that I always saw was 1, and you always saw 3s. And since we've been working together, we constantly see 1s and 3s together. And now 1s and 3s have become my lucky number. So like even I passed a house in my mom's neighborhood yesterday and I was like, oh my God, that's my dream house. And the address number was 31. Like it was 31 on the street. And it's just like little moments like that make me feel, I don't know, like that kind of divide, like that little tie to something bigger than us that makes me feel supported. I remember us screenshotting our walks and our call time, and it was like exactly 113 or like 1.31 miles. Like it was all the numbers were 1s and 3s when we decided to work together.
Marissa, I knew you were 11s or 1s and I was 3s. I never put 2 and 2 together. That's why we're seeing 1113.
Yeah, everywhere.
God,
It's
that's
combined angel numbers. I am obsessed.
oh my gosh. I feel like we need to integrate that into the business.
I know. If anyone sees any prices that are like $111.33, that's why.
That is why. It's crazy. Signs are so cool though. Signs are I actually asked for a sign. Oh my God. Oh my God. Marissa, do you know the little pickle I posted on my Instagram story?
Yeah.
Today? So it was a pickle. I was about to make a big decision and have a conversation yesterday. And I asked the universe for a sign in an Uber to a pottery class before this decision was going to be made. And I said, please show me a sign. And I was like, I need to see it soon. And I go down to sit at the pottery table and there was this little pickle. It was so cute. It was like a needlepoint pickle and it had a little sign on it saying, I might be small, but my wisdom is mighty. I'm trusting you. Go do what you need to do. And it's like, there are signs everywhere, everywhere. Another crazy one that I forgot to tell you too from this past weekend is I was getting lunch with my mom on Saturday. And I was talking about my last Substack essay about being both light pink and red at the same time. And as I said that to her, I was talking about the contrast. Like red is more of my career, light pink is more of my interpersonal. A woman walked by me in a color blocked outfit, a light pink dress with a red hot blazer.
See, I love that so much because I think when things are like hard, those little moments, it just like teaches you to stay on the right path. And they start showing up when you ask for them. Like, exactly like the pickle. One of my biggest examples of this was when I was getting ready to go to Hoffman. I was really nervous. It was like kind of a crazy thing to do in some ways because I had left my career and didn't have a job. And so to take a week, spend all that money on going to Hoffman, delay sort of the process of figuring out what I was going to do this self work. And just like I was nervous about actually doing it. Like, will this be good for me? Will this set me back? And I was just feeling really torn, and I asked to see one of my favorite kind of like wildflowers, which is bougainvillea, I think is how you say it. It's like the pink kind of wildflowers. You don't normally. I was in New York City. You don't see it in New York at all. And my mom had sent me a box with stuff for me to look at for Hoffman. It had like journals in it, old photos, like all of the stuff that I hadn't seen in many, many years. And when I opened the photos, the first picture was me as a little girl holding a bouquet of that flower in my hands. And I was like, oh my God, I'm meant to go. And there's just like so many like that. And like what you were saying, like noticing someone outside their outfit or like a sign, literally like a street sign. And I think when shit is like hard and you're in the messy middle, at least for me, I know for you too, but those signs keep me going.
We were said that. I forgot about that story from Hoffman. That was crazy. What's also really cute is like, not cute, but symbolic is when you go somewhere like Hoffman, you're returning to yourself. You're returning to your child, your authentic self. And
Yeah,
he was holding the flowers.
totally. Like Hoffman is all about reconnecting with your inner child. And now looking back, it's like my inner child was like inviting me to like come reconnect. But yeah, like Hoffman was the first time that was the first time I really kind of connected with the idea of your authentic self and who you really are underneath everything, which is, a big part of the shift program and what we're helping women become. And it ties back to your essay too about like feeling really red, but maybe your authentic self is more light pink. And that was my first experience really peeling back. Who am I beneath all these layers I've built to protect myself and who I've told myself I am because that is who is acceptable in the world, you know?
God, I know. It's really interesting too because it's like never our fault. Like the armor that we build around us, our protective responses, this identity that we show, we lead with to be accepted, to be loved, to be chosen. We did that to protect ourselves at the time. Like we know it's like it comes in waves. Like I can remember like events from high school or childhood or middle school where like the red started to grow and then it started to get deeper and bigger and it started to case me wider. And then, the biggest red I ever felt was I think was living in New York and one of the worst jobs I was ever in. That was just not me. I was miserable. I was sick physically. I was so unhappy in my career. I just felt so far from myself. And I'll never forget the moment. It was like a real turning point for me is I heard a voice recording of my voice and it made me cringe. And it was like my voice was light pink. My voice was me. And I had strayed so far from it that I couldn't, it made me so uncomfortable. And I think like returning to your authentic self can feel like such a daunting task if you don't know where to start. But I feel like it's, those layers built so much, so slowly over time that it's how can we start chipping away at them just as slowly.
Maybe there was like a pivot where you sort of started to become that identity. And then also, I don't really know, my story was Hoffman, but I don't know if I know your story of like how you really kind of came back to who your true authentic self is when you were doing all this work over the last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I would say there was three events. There was like a strong friend rejection of like a betrayal of a friend group where I felt I didn't know how to deal with the pain. And so the best way that I knew how was to become very successful because I thought that would make me untouchable. Like I can't get hurt if I'm better, if I'm the smartest, if I'm a really good athlete, if I get into a really good school, if I don't get close enough to anyone. And I think being really good at things protect me in two ways. One, I truly believe that my self-worth was associated with how prestigious my career was, where I went to school, how good of an athlete I was, how I looked, if I was thin, if I was pretty, if I was chosen. And then if I was really good and better, then I wouldn't get rejected. Secondly, and I didn't think I was aware of this at the time, but I think that the more I differentiated myself. It took a lot of effort to do that, to get straight A's, to get into Cornell, to get into venture capital. It kept me really busy. So it kept me from getting too close to anyone, especially dating. Like I went through a period where I just didn't date anyone because I didn't want anyone to see me. I was so afraid of being seen. So that's where it started. I would say a friend rejection, a very bad relationship when I was young. We all have those, but I definitely did not know how to deal with that pain. And so I just put it into like, how could I make that never happen to me again? And then the third would be I was dyslexic. So I struggled with school, all of middle school. It was so frustrating for me. I was embarrassed by it. I was ashamed. Like, why am I not good at this? And when I finally learned, like, oh, I'm dyslexic, and if I study this way, I can actually do really well, it kind of became a tool that I used to differentiate and protect myself. So it'd be those 3 things, but how I started unraveling this is I hit rock bottom in New York. I will never forget the day. It was actually on May 6th, which is really interesting. I think it was like 2023. Yeah. And I was like, "I cannot feel like this anymore." My body was screaming at me. Eczema, psoriasis, dermatitis, 30 excess pounds of weight and inflammation, insane bloat, like SIBO, gut dysbiosis, crazy hormones, like no periods to debilitating pain. I'm on the floor for 3 days. Migraines, anxiety, insomnia. It was hell and a half. And I was so upset. I was hiding. I like didn't want to be seen by the world. I was so dissociated from myself. My therapist kept saying like meditate, meditate. I was working with a somatic practitioner, and I'm like, I can't. I literally don't know. I don't know what I am. I don't know who I am. And I will say the turning point for me was a relationship. It was one of my ex-boyfriends who I dated for a while who saw another weird symbolism. I looked at a light pink clip as I'm about to say this to you. Um, who saw my softness. He saw my light pink. He saw who I was at my absolute core before I was even close to understanding it myself. And it was one of the kindest, softest, most nurturing, loving relationships, happiest relationships. And I almost feel like he walked me home to myself and showed me it was lovable, showed me it was acceptable, showed me like this whole category of life, like softness and slowness and coziness. And the craziest thing is my health changed entirely, entirely transformed.
I mean, that's our whole thesis, but it really is crazy how much our health is tied to this. Like, our physical well-being is so tied. I mean, yours especially, like I didn't have nearly the number of symptoms you had, but I felt pretty debilitated, I would say, by my anxiety, my OCD, and my insomnia with like a rise of, acne and gut issues. And I really don't struggle with those things anymore. And I think a big part of it is that not having that dissociation, but what you were saying about when we're young, like you learn it's almost like not safe to be yourself, or you feel rejected in some way, and so you adapt by like modifying who you are. And I think that's kind of like all of our origin story. Like I remember being, having red hair and freckles is nice now, but it was not nice in middle school. It wasn't nice to I don't know, like I kind of I learned that kind of my natural way of being could cost me friends, or boys wouldn't like me, or whatever. And we get really adept in like changing who we are to meet our circumstances. And over time, I genuinely like that it really does make us sick and miserable. And also, it makes us choose things that aren't right for us. So, like, both of us careers that aren't right for us, different relationships that weren't right for us, cities that aren't right for us. And when you don't know who you are, it's really hard to get rid of those things because they are your identity. So I almost think if you're someone who wants to change your situation, if you're starting to realize that you're not happy, before you make any big moves like a career change or a breakup or anything else, trying to come back to who you really are inside underneath those layers and what does that person want and what makes them happy, almost a better starting point than actually trying to figure out what to do next.
When did you feel like you weren't your authentic self? You were living in a life that wasn't yours?
Uh, I think most of my life I felt that way, but I didn't know I felt that way. And I think I wasn't aware enough to tie the discomfort I'd felt on Sunday nights going into the career that I was supposed to be really happy in, or feeling anxious in a relationship that looked really great and that I was proud of and happy to have. Or it was like I spent a lot of time in my life doing where the guiding thought of what I was doing, whether it was taking a job or the way I dressed myself or the way I presented myself, the inner voice that was making those decisions was based not on what I like, what I want, what I'm happy with. That voice was so silenced. It was so much more based on approval and validation and protecting myself with the things that I thought would make me happy. And I think a lot of the women we talk to are around 30 because I think that in your 20s, you're so focused on getting to the thing that you want and you're like, okay with you're having fun, you're distracted, and you're like, once I get there, I'm going to be really, really happy. And when it really starts to hit you is when you've done the things that you think are going to make you happy and you're sick, you're not that happy, and you're like, oh no, I've kind of like summited the mountain and I don't want to be here. I'm not actually happy on this mountain. And I think we go through waves of feeling like I should be more grateful. I should be happy. Like, what's wrong with me? Instead of like, maybe I chose the wrong path or not the wrong path, but like maybe this isn't a path that I'm supposed to be on anymore. I mean, and that was like what you were saying with VC, like the New York, the job, all of it is like exactly what I went through.
It's like sometimes I also think that there's an element of slowing down in this. I think that you have to slow down to reconnect. And I actually I have a question for you an exercise that helps people kind of understand what you're talking about, but it's like, what are the words that describe you? Like, what is the essence of you? And sometimes you have to slow down enough, like literally slow down to connect to your gut intuition and to hear what lights you up, what like actually brings you joy. Because I think so many of us are conditioned to be like, I love this specific workout class, or I love like for me, like people would be like, "Oh, what are your hobbies?" I'm like literally reading like biology books. I'm like or economic books. I'm like, does that bring me joy, or am I so dissociated from myself that I don't even know? So I think there's an element of like slowing down to be like, what actually fills my soul? Like what fills me up? And then there's the shift back into your authentic self, which I think happens over a million tiny little moments, a ton of aligned action that compound to redirect the course of your life. Like, when you're like, oh, this is not the right career for me, but I don't know where to start, it's slow down enough to hear what is authentic to you. And then taking these microscopic aligned actions that kind of guide you into that over time. They compound to guide you into a different story, to move you onto a different path. But I feel like slowing down enough to hear it and then to take those aligned actions is really important. But I want to ask you because I'm really curious. I was writing my Substack about it this week of my core four words because I find that authentic self can feel vague and broad. And when you go through a subset of questions and you define who you are at your core, what fills your soul, what lights you up, and in four words with a list of rituals underneath, it is like a map that always guides you home that you can always pull out when you're lost. And I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't have your words, you don't have
No,
to answer.
I do. So this is Yeah, I mean, this is a practice actually that I first learned at Hoffman. And for anyone listening, if you look up the Hoffman process, it's like a week of kind of the intense work the same work that Annie and I are doing with Shift, but really consolidated into 1 week. And it's their own method of this. But one of the key things that we learned and to take home with us is to do appreciation and gratitude every day. And so what that looks like is like at the end of your day, you write down a few things you're grateful for. And it could be something as small as like having a bed you love or like that you feel at home in, or having a friend that you talk to that day who hears you. And then self appreciation are like, what are the what are the things you appreciate about yourself? But behind that and the work that we did to get to being able to appreciate things day to day are like, what are the core qualities of your authentic self? And it is stripped of ego, it's stripped of the shoulds. And for me, what I realized is like my core qualities were not the kind of things that I was necessarily most proud of in my life. They were more just things that I realized are true about me. Like, I guess this is maybe, there's so many like different words that you can use, but for me, um, my like my empathy is something that is one of the for things that's really authentic about me. And it's something that I protected for a long time because it would often get me hurt is being empathetic. But I realize that's core to who I am and I'm proud of it. It's my resilience, the ability to pick me up when I'm pick myself back up and keep going. It's something that I appreciate about myself and feels like core to my authentic self. It is resilient, empathetic, loving, and patient, which sounds really strange because I would have described myself as such an impatient person because I was always waiting for the next thing. But actually, when I stripped it all away, I realized that I am able to, like, I am very much willing to wait and willing to let things unfold if I remove the outside perspective away. And so I think your authentic qualities are things that that are like kind of true about you and that you can nurture to be more true. And they might be totally opposite of the way you're acting sometimes, but they're beneath all of it. I don't know. But I have like a bunch more. It's funny to say them because you almost like feel like you're like weirdly bragging, but you're also like kind of manifesting them. But I don't know. What are yours?
They're they are an active manifestation too, because you, like, lead into embodying them. So mine are less about, like, traits. Mine are connection, cozy, creativity, and glow. And, like,
I love
those feel
those.
so right to me. But connection is, like, what fills my soul is deep connection. Like, deep, intimate, vulnerable friendships, like dinner parties that linger for hours and really deep conversation. It is feeling so close to someone, like the intimacy of a really deep connection and being seen. Cozy is the one I tried to ignore my whole life, but it is taking a really long way to your favorite coffee shop. It is the fall. Like, I love everything about the fall, like the coziness, the tea, the ritual. It is snuggling by the fire. It is snuggling with humans, like human connection. It is just like this being, like softly, slowly being and like loving something so presently. Cozy is also your favorite brownie. It is indulging in something that just feels like comfort. Creativity is everything associated with building a business. That's like my entrepreneurship. It is visionary. It is thinking through innovative ways. It is connecting with like minded women. It is podcasting. It is traveling, it's events, it's public speaking. It also has an element of connection to it. It is like colorful, it is bold, it's very like innovative in nature. I feel like creativity is also the vehicle in which I can execute my purpose, which is also why entrepreneurship is the only path for me. Like it
Yeah.
is the only place I ever feel like home. I feel like you feel the same way about that.
I definitely feel the same way. Also, I'm realizing it's funny, your traits that you're describing are I have like almost like a different term for these. These are like my core like life values. Like what am I orienting my life around to feel? And what I was answering was more like what are like the authentic traits within me that I've maybe that can come out when I allow them to that I've been maybe protecting. And I think, because for me, the things you said, like what drives me, and this is where I think a lot of people start if they're considering something like a career change, is what is most important to you in your life? Where do you feel authentically you? How do you want your life to feel every day? And for me, the things that I wrote down were really similar. Connection is like top of the list. Like I think so many people yearn for connection. We hear about the loneliness epidemic all the time. And a lot of us go through our lives without a lot of connection, especially if you're performing at a job all day and you don't really have that there and you're maybe coming home and working more or you're just working out and you're not talking to the people around you and you don't have community. And so, yeah, like for me, like community and connection is everything. And so I was like, whatever I do with my life, it has to be like that has to be a primary driver. And then, yeah, and on creativity, the other one is I actually found my mom found a whole binder of my writing from when I was in 6th grade. And it's like 20-page long poems, short stories, journal entries. And I used to write all the time. And that was my form of creative expression. I also liked to dance, but I totally lost connection with that. I could be creative a little bit at work, like, oh, what's a creative way to increase our conversion rate, you know? But like that is not what is like lighting up my soul. And so when I was during that off period, when you and I were just chatting as friends before we had thought this business, I reconnected with writing and I fell in love with it all over again. And I was like, whatever I do next, I want it to feel like this. Like, I need it to feel like this because it's when you're in that flow of being creative, time stands still. You don't want to escape the moment. And actually, you're reminding me, I want to talk about like the whole escapism because that's a really good way of knowing if your life is not right for you, too, is if you're constantly finding ways to escape your life. If you are planning trips incessantly, if you are just like anything to avoid being alone or having something to look forward to because your days aren't bringing you enough joy. When your days are filled with creativity and connection, you're not like fixated on always having like a trip or something to look forward to because you're actually just like so lit up by that.
Yep. 100%. And can you ground yourself in your day? Like for me, I go to bed so excited for my morning routine, for my coffee, for my lemon water, for my journaling, for time, like an hour of uninterrupted time, and then a walk in the sunlight or getting my favorite coffee out and looking forward to that. Like, are there ways to ground yourself in the present where you one are so connected and embodied and then those rituals are like the constant return to self. So you don't need to escape or avoid. Can you create a life that feels so nourishing that you don't need to run away from it? And I also think this and this is what we focus on the shift is like the emotional hygiene of when things do come up that is uncomfortable to feel or that is a painful memory or something that stings. Can you build capacity to sit with the discomfort, to process it energetically? Marissa and I were working on the shift earlier today, and we are equating this process to like you take a shower every day to wash your body, to wash the germs off. You pee to like literally flush the liquid out of your body. We need to do the same thing with our emotions. And when we expand our capacity to sit with discomfort and feel and flush, we expand our capacity to just be present in our lives because it's not so painful.
Absolutely. I think where I don't wanna come off as annoying is like, "Oh, everyone should just leave their career." It doesn't have to be that black and white. Like, to your point, you can build a lot of this within your life as it exists today. I mean, so many of us are overbooking ourselves, are saying yes to things that we don't wanna do, and we leave so little time for our actual selves of what lights us up. And in the time when you're actually giving back to yourself, creating that connection with yourself, doing things that you actually like doing, that even if you're going to a job that maybe isn't the best for you, because like maybe you need that job, maybe it's important, whatever. Like there's a million reasons why people shouldn't have to just like quit their jobs to do this. But so many of us, and especially I was in this camp too, I was just going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. And there was very little presence involved in with it. I think that a lot of our people talk about hustle culture all the time, but when we're moving and hustling and grinding and on to the next, and we don't ever sit with ourselves, that is literally, I mean, scientifically creating a lot of that low grade stress when we're not processing our emotions, we're not taking time to slow down and be there for ourselves. That chronic stress eventually will show up in your body. It's going to show up as chronic pain. It's going to show up as an autoimmune disease. It's going to show up maybe as a skin condition, but like it's almost, I think for a lot of us, including both of us, we had to get to the point where our symptoms were like too hard to ignore to actually realize this. But if you can build that in sooner, you can also like avoid having to feel burned out, sick, sleepless nights.
Also think like if you are able to figure out who you are, your most authentic self, and embed those rituals into your day to day, it keeps you grounded. It keeps you aligned, even if your career isn't, even if you're not ready to leave the relationship that isn't, even if you're not ready to move out of the city that isn't aligned. Build in those rituals to stay grounded and connected, and then you're hearing all the whispers. Because I think what also happens is that you're destined to go to all these different cities in your life and like get off the train at certain times, then get on the right one and move and leave things, catch and release, learn from a job, release it, move on to the next one and end up in the aligned life that feels right to you. And I think if we ignore the whispers, we are faced with a hard left. And illness is often a hard left because it physically stops your body in its tracks. Like for me personally, TMI, but if I get really stressed or if I'm not making a decision, if I'm not listening to my body, I will not sleep. I will get constipated. I will have anxiety that affects my work. I will get ADHD. My body will physically interrupt me. And what happens is the insomnia makes me miss my workout. And then I feel even worse. And then I get more anxious. And I physically come to a halt because I'm not listening to the whispers. So I think that, figuring out what authentically feels so good and nurturing to you at your core and embedding that into your day almost helps you just hear the little whispers so you can collect the information and gradually make the turn in your life rather than coming to a screeching halt of a hard left, which is very uncomfortable. And I personally felt that through my body, literally stopped functioning on me.
So we've actually heard a few people even talk about this in relationships. Like sometimes your body will actually like react poorly when you're in the wrong relationship. For me, when I went through a period of being single after a long-term relationship when I was 27, and I threw myself into dating, into work. I have a habit of throwing my whole life away at once, kind of, and like starting new. And so it was like, I got out of this relationship. I switched my job after 4 years. Had a new apartment and I was determined to not miss a beat. I didn't want to let myself grieve. I didn't want to let myself feel it. And so I can see now in retrospect how I almost create all of these diversions to avoid sitting with myself. And what I developed was chronic pelvic pain and like what felt like a UTI. I felt like I had a UTI for like 6 months. I saw every doctor. I was on course after course after course of antibiotics. And that pain, like, honestly went away once I settled down and was like happy. And once I was like in a new and stable relationship that was really good. But looking back, I focused all my efforts on the pain and like finding a diagnosis and a solution and whatever that even like further pulled me away from myself. But I can see now how like those symptoms only show up for me when I'm in a period of very, very chronic stress. And it's almost like our bodies try to slow us down. And that's what, like, looking back, I'm like, I was taking on way too much at once. I was so stressed. Of course, I had symptoms. And yeah, like you've experienced this too. We hear it all the time where women get out of the bad relationship and all of a sudden the skin condition goes away. It's pretty amazing what our bodies will choose to communicate with us when they're not left any other option, really.
It is always yeah. We always know. Why is it so hard to listen to our intuition?
Because it's inconvenient. I was actually talking to a friend about this today because she's been through the ringer with chronic illness, and she is now like, my job was making me sick, my lifestyle was making me sick, and it is so hard. It is harder in some ways to acknowledge that than it is to like be sick, like to constantly be like treating yourself, because we've been taught as a culture that those, like, what is important and what is like not important, and slowing down, you know I just keep coming back to like women in places, or women and men in places that are not quite like the US is, where it's like go 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 with career, and just like the intensity of our culture, the overconsumption, the value on things and items. Like, autoimmune diseases are just not as rampant in those places as they are here. So I think we don't listen because it's inconvenient. I mean, I didn't listen because it was inconvenient. I don't know what.
It's inconvenient, but I also feel like we're so good at intellectualizing our way out of things. Like, we're so good at convincing ourselves that our needs are too much, or maybe that's unreasonable, or like maybe these benefits outweigh, like, I'm especially talking about relationships, but like maybe the benefits of this, you know, maybe I don't need this much, or maybe like this is unrealistic, or we compare to other people. It's like we find a million ways to convince ourselves out of the truth because it's scary, because you can't see what's next. And maybe part of it is because maybe we don't fully trust ourselves that, like, on the others, it's always this or something better. It is.
It is, but it's like so hard to believe that in the moment. It is so hard to take a trust fall, to slow down, to take a step back. And I mean, for both of us, things had to get so bad for us to find this work. And I think one of our goals with even having these conversations and doing this the work and starting shift is like, how can we get people to tap into this earlier and sooner and before things get to the rock bottom place that we kind of hit? Because if you start doing this earlier, you do build the self-trust. I think the other thing is, like, when you've gone 10 years without making decisions from a place of self-trust or taking trust falls, it's even scarier. You're, like, higher up the mountain and you have further to fall in a sense. At least that's how I felt turning 30. I was like, "Okay, everyone told me at 30 that I was gonna be this was, like, my decade," like, your 20s, you're building, in your 30s, you get to enjoy. But no one talks about what happens if you don't like what you've built.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah. But it's also kind of cool because I think around your 30s, you have a sense of self and an understanding that is radically different than what you have in your 20s. So you're reconstructing and building from such a more empowered place. And I think
Yeah.
once you take a trust fall or two, you realize it's always something good on the other side. Like breakups especially are, like, really exciting. Like, there's never a bad story after a breakup.
Yeah, you never hear anyone be like, "Oh, I was really, like, struggling in this relationship, and I broke up with him, and 5 years later, it was the worst decision I've ever made." It's
Exactly.
always a good decision at the end of the day. If it needed to happen, it's the right decision. If like, there's lots and lots of happy relationships that didn't have breakups because it didn't need to happen. But no one who needed to break up regrets it. Even people who get back together typically are happy that they broke up for
Always.
it. And so it's like, I think we suffer with, like, the devil we know syndrome, where it's like you're almost happier in the comfort of your discomfort because it's so familiar than the
Yes.
unknown discomforts.
Hell yes, that is so true. It's also like we talk a lot about the shift about our protective patterns. Like we go to things to avoid discomfort, and often those things also bring us discomfort, but it is a familiar discomfort. Like for me, a protective pattern is overeating. So other people, it might be drinking and dealing with a hangover or smoking cigarettes and, not whatever, not feeling well, scrolling and then having a trouble sleeping. Like that obviously comes with a cost, but it's a cost and a discomfort that we're aware of and we're really familiar and it's predictable. And I think the human experience we like to think that we can see forward. We like to think that we can see what's going to happen in a month, 2 months, in a year. We can't. Tomorrow, this next second is completely out of our control. But it's almost like if we have these elements of pain or discomfort and it's like, well, at least I know what it's going to be like. I can recognize it, then it's better than the unknown. But what we don't realize is that you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like none of us know the unknowns. And if we can detach and trust and jump, it's usually like always going to be better. Or we're going to learn the lesson that gets us to what is better. And that is pain worth going through.
Yeah, it is. And I can't even sit here and pretend like I'm so good at the trust falls because most of mine have been, yeah, I should have. There's so many things, and I shouldn't say should have, but there's so many things that I waited so, so, so long. And I think that's where a lot of us get stuck. And so I think if someone's listening to this and they're like trying to decide, do I stay? Do I go? Do I change? I think look at the places you're escaping your life. For me, drinking was actually a big one. I was never drinking to the point where anyone would have been concerned, but I needed, I suffered with insomnia, and ironically alcohol makes insomnia so much worse, or it makes sleeping worse. You fall asleep but then it wakes you up in the middle of the night. But my thoughts, like when I closed my eyes and laid my head on the pillow and my phone was closed for the day, my emails were closed, and there was nothing but my thoughts with me, that was my darkest place. That was my scariest place because that's where my intuition was like, you're not happy, you're not happy, you're not happy. And all I wanted was to be happy in my circumstances because I didn't want to change them. And so if I had a glass of wine or two, it kind of dulled that intuition. And to your point, it's a way to avoid sitting with yourself. It's a way to avoid feeling. And I would fall asleep and then I would wake up at 4 a.m. or the next day, slightly more cloudy, not feeling my best. Um, but you get on this loop because you don't want to hear. It's like you just don't want to hear what you don't want to hear. You don't
Yeah.
want to be told that message.
100%. But when you hear it and face it and go through it, not around it, it is always better. And then it builds your capacity to not need the crutch the next time. To like it increases your capacity to just like live your life, to like live through pain and discomfort, to experience.
Yeah. And yeah, if you look at where you're escaping and you decide, I'm going to like, it's just like small decisions of like, I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to try to take one step towards what my intuition's telling me. Just going to like pay a little bit more attention. Those, I think those steps, at least for both of us, coming back to like, how did you kind of reconnect with your authentic self? It is like one step at a time doing something that isn't escaping. It's being with yourself even when it's hard. And you can't be with yourself if you're constantly avoiding or escaping by being busy, being on your phone, drinking, dating incessantly on the apps, whatever it is, eating, all of our different protective responses.
And like it sounds unpleasant, like stripping away all of these things that you get pleasure from, but the pleasure of sitting in discomfort, connecting to who you are authentically, and then, to use our term, shifting rituals, to figure out the things that shift you into your authenticity, that shift you into yourself. So, routines like your morning routine, or long walks, or a favorite podcast, or cooking a healthy meal, or connection with people that you love, or farmers markets, like the things that shift you into who you are authentically, that help you process an emotion and move through something and stay connected and present and grounded in yourself. Those small things end up compounding over time into the aligned life that you don't need to escape from. And I always say this too, it's like when we fill our days with authentic healing rituals that nurture our core self rather than escape ourselves, you don't need to see the roadmap. You don't need to see the career that you end up building, the guy that you end up marrying, the new best friend that you're going to have. When you are going for that long walk and shopping at the farmer's market and inviting the friend of a friend to the dinner party, those things compound to put you on the path into the aligned life. Where the rituals that you use to escape yourself, like the eating or the drinking or the zoning out, those compound to keep you stuck in all the areas that you're just trying to escape from. It's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it's such a vicious cycle. I mean, drinking is such a good example because you wake up feeling worse and then alcohol creates a craving for more alcohol. When you feel bad, you want to drink more. And you can apply that to really anything. And I'm not even talking about like full fledged addiction. I'm just talking about like doing something kind of over and over because it's what your nervous system has learned to reach for. It's like when I feel this discomfort, this is the easiest thing to get me out of that discomfort as quickly as possible. It's not thinking about how you'll feel tomorrow or the next day or whatever. It's just removing discomfort from that moment. You were reminding me of Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. It's like one of the most famous books about this, but it really like changed my brain a little bit because if you're constantly sacrificing your present happiness for the possibility of future happiness, that future that you're imagining is totally conjecture. It doesn't exist, to your point earlier. But when you're doing a lot of things that make you feel really good in the present, and the present moment's the only thing we have, that is actually like what makes a really good life. So we should focus generally on more. And when I say focus, I feel like it's like not in a YOLO way, not in like a do whatever you want because the present moment's the only thing that matters, but like optimize for your true happiness with who you are in your life, in yourself now, rather than just thinking, I will eventually be happy. Because I think that's where I had that wake up call at 30. And 30 is not even old at all, but like I kept thinking, if I just get through, I'll be happy. And the truth is, like, why would I be happy on that path 10 years in when I wasn't happy the whole way up? Like, it almost like is counterintuitive, but so many of us get stuck in that trap or in the relationship of like, you are imagining a person that could be this way. We have to make decisions off of how does your body feel around that person today? How do they act today? Everything else is like so made up. And at least for me, as like such a future thinker, that is where I got the most
One of
stuck.
my one of my best friends said this to me a while ago. She said, if nothing changed in this relationship for the rest of your life, would you still choose it? That is how you should make a decision.
That is literally the question that you should ask in every category. I love that because it's like that's the only real data. The rest of the data is our brains making up something based on a lot of things, but also we can't control that person. So we can't like our vision of them involves what we would maybe do if we were them, or it involves looking up to someone in our career who we don't know their life. We don't, we're imagining things. So it's like you really do have to look at right now, like, if nothing changed, would I be happy? And yeah, apply that to every single category.
And I the overwhelm too of making a change can scare people, but I always think that there can be a gap between awareness and action. Like you can have the awareness that this is not the right career for you, that this is not the right relationship for you, and then you can give yourself the gentleness and the space to round that corner, to move towards action in a way that feels right and comfortable for you. But I think what you can never abandon is your awareness. You cannot try and justify your way out of something, intellectualize your way out of something. I think oftentimes in relationships too, relationships are so tricky because they're so often portrayed on social media as like a villain. Like the guy is like an asshole or the guy sucks. Most of the time, the guy doesn't suck. He's just not your person. And I think so often we try and convince ourselves, oh, but they're so great. They're so loyal. They're so smart. Oh, they would never cheat. They'd be an amazing dad or whatever, all of these things. But that doesn't mean they're your person. So we can have an awareness, own it, and not intellectualize ourselves out of it, and also give ourselves the softness to get to the action.
Well, I've thought about this a lot because when having gone through breakups myself with men who are not villains, social media can feel almost make you doubt yourself or make you feel like crazy because the stories that are put out there of like, this guy had a double life or cheated on me a million times or was abusive or mean or whatever. And it's like, there isn't a lot of nuance for there's a lot of love there. This is a really good person, but there's maybe like not a certain compatibility met or something like that. And that's actually when I talk to, what we've gone through, when we talk to our friends, that is the more common case. And it's the hardest one to get out of, I think, because um it's the same trap as the job. It's like I should be happy to have this job. It could be so much worse. I work so hard for this job. And if you are not, but like all you can base like we can't judge ourselves for whether we feel happy and good or not. And that's where I think I got stuck too, was like I should feel this way. I should feel this way. And now I'm sort of like, well, I have to just accept how I feel and have the awareness of how I feel instead of punishing myself for feeling a certain way or avoiding acknowledging that I feel a certain way. And then also, you reminded me of something. I want to talk about what you said, but like between the awareness and the action, because there's a big gap there when you're aware of something and actually taking steps to change it. And I think there's a lot of like tools that people can do to move through that. And one of my big ones was journaling about fear.
Mm.
Because I realized the reason I wasn't taking steps was because of fear. And I had to really understand what I was afraid of, what was the scenario I was afraid of, whose judgment, what were those fears, and get like underneath of the fear to be able to have clarity on what to do. Because we really can't make good decisions when we're in pain or when we're scared. Like you're always just going to reach for the easiest thing. You're not going to get the right thing. So you have to like get through the fear and the pain, and you have to like befriend the fear and the pain and really understand it to be able to even take the right step.
100%. That is a really, really good question is what am I so afraid of? Asking yourself what you are so afraid of, it's amazing because I'm looking at a book right now. I will put this in the show notes, but it's an amazing book on fear. But it often lessens the fear. Like when you name it and you recognize it, there is this feeling of coziness, of softness, of freedom, of like the scary thing doesn't feel so scary. And just holding it, it's like, I don't know, it's liberating. Like people are so afraid to go, oh, it's called the places that scare you. But as you start to get in touch with that core fear, it doesn't it loses its power.
It does. Also asking yourself like, where is this fear from? So for me, a big fear for mine when it came to my career was my family had gone through a bankruptcy. We lost everything. And this fear of like everything can be taken away from me. I could be, like I came home from a study abroad and my house was gone and all of our stuff was in storage and my mom was living with a friend. And so I wasn't really able to take until I really met that fear and like reconnected with 19-year-old me who experienced that. I wasn't really able to make decisions about my career except for from a place of like just this my entire attitude towards money and career was so driven by that like trauma that I wasn't even aware of it, but I had this constant nagging fear of like if I am not so careful, all of this will go away, or I could never take a risk by starting a company. Even just having money savings, like the agony over like if I ever had to dip into my savings or if the stock market dipped. I mean, it's like those fears drive us in ways we can't even see until we really get underneath them. And then when I started journaling about it, it's like present day me is not actually afraid of that. That fear is so deeply rooted in my nervous system that it's running the show. But when I started meeting it and reacquainting myself with it, I was actually able to like I don't actually feel afraid of that anymore. And I think it's from like, yeah, like journaling and what you were saying, like befriending it and yeah.
There's also insight. Like, when you realize what you're so afraid of, you learn something about yourself and you get closer to yourself. And I think the closer we are to ourselves, the less fear we have because the more we realize we're capable to handle whatever comes to us. Like, a big fear of mine was the fear of abandonment. And then I own that fear and I realize I'm okay. Like, I'm actually really okay alone. And like, I'm never really alone. I have amazing friends and family, and like, if a relationship ends, that's not the end of me, you know? And I think that the more honest we get about a fear, the closer we get to ourselves and the closer we get to the capacity to deal with the fear. So,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, go to the places that scare you.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna read that. The abandonment fear is so real. I weirdly feel like I don't maybe men have this too. It is so prevalent among women, the fear of abandonment. It's crazy. Like I have it, you have it, so many of the women we work with have it, and it sounds so trite, but the real way to heal it is to learn to not abandon yourself. And sometimes when I'm saying this stuff, I'm like, I just can picture myself 2 years ago rolling my eyes at myself now. So I want to find a way to articulate this. But I think what you were saying is like, you have all these parts of your life that are really full, and you also are happy just with yourself, which is something that I didn't have. And I think a lot of people for me, if I was at home alone on a Friday night, that was like the end of the world. I needed a plan. I needed a friend. I needed to be texting someone. I, to this day, could probably work on having just fewer conversations going at any given moment and let myself be with myself more. Do you have that? Or did your fear of abandonment, like, was it just relationships?
It's just relationships. It was a fear of being seen, and then it was a fear of being left. But I had it with my friends too. My friends, it changed first. Like, I was so afraid to be my authentic self because I was like afraid to get too close to someone and then be rejected or someone leave. And then it first shifted with friends and then it shifted relationally. I really, I talk about my ex boyfriend in very positive lights. And it's true. I don't know if I would have gotten there relationally without him. Like, I would have. I would have. I don't want to say that. We don't need to rely on other people, but I think other people or experiences can be a catalyst. Like, I was so afraid of being seen. And I think I was so afraid of being seen because if I would be seen, then I could be left because my true self is not worthy. So it first took friendships that loved me and admired me. I guess it is really the same thing. It took friendships who loved me, saw me, admired me for who I truly, authentically was. For me, that was my college friends. I've the best friends in the world and I love them dearly. And they just saw the real me. They accepted it and in all the ways that I am. And then it took that relationship romantically to be so seen. So I think it was realizing that I can be seen and loved helped me see and love myself and started to erode the fear of being abandoned because I was like, I don't need to sustain this act to be chosen. There was like this sense of like an exhale of like, like I can just be myself and that life is so much better rather than hustling in venture capital and working till 1 a.m. every Saturday. Like I can go stroll a farmer's market and like bake my favorite food and not be protecting myself constantly because the hustle was protection. So I think fear of being seen and then fully being seen got me closer to myself. And then the closer I got to myself, the less afraid I was of being left because I'm okay if I am.
That, I mean, we have kind of talked about this, but when you have that inner self confidence and you're okay with yourself, when people leave, you start viewing it as people being removed from your path so the right people can enter. And I actually think so. You were talking about romantic and also friends. I think friend breakups and can often be exponentially more painful than romantic ones in a lot of ways. And I'm very fortunate. I have not had a friend breakup in a very, very long time, but I had one in college when I was in my truly my lowest point. I had been going through so much with my family. I felt so lost. I was put on a medication that every time I drank, I like immediately blacked out because they didn't tell me not to drink on the medication. It was a nightmare. It was probably like one of the darkest periods of my life. And this friend who I consider to be my best friend, my sister, just like ghosted me basically, like stopped being my friend. And that hit me harder, I think, than some of my breakups that I've had in my life. And I had to like I had to realize that I needed to kind of get to a good place on my own, but also it it did take for me realizing like I had to almost like relearn that trust back, almost like, an animal who had a bad owner previously and has to learn how to be with this new owner. As I developed friends in my adulthood and little moments of just truly being myself around them, being seen, not being left, being able to have bad moments, them being proud of me for my good moments. Cause that's another one is like sometimes you can develop these relationships or these friendships that are predicated on both of you being kind of like in a bad place. A lot of the self-work that we do, it doesn't have to be alone. It can be relational because we do see so much more of ourselves in relation to other people. And I think that's how humans are meant to become is, with our relationships in a way.
100%. But I think we can leave you with this today too is just that it's all about the return to self. And if a relationship shows you things that you don't want, things that you do want, if they walk you back home to yourself, at the end of the day, all of it is about our relationship with ourselves. And there's all of these different ways that we get exposed to it, that we learn about it, whether it's work, whether it's triggers, whether it's protective patterns that we have, whether it's relationships that we have. But I think the whole purpose of all of them is to understand, to help them show us who we are at our core. And it is
Yeah.
our job to consistently embody that.
Annie, I love that so much. I could end this with if for like super tangible, we've talked about a lot of different ways. But for someone who is like maybe just like not in connection with themselves, maybe feeling stuck, not sure what to do next. What are like the tangible things that you, even just like one or two tangible things that you can do when you're in that place to start to reconnect with yourself?
This was me this fall. Marissa and I had kind of parallel lives this fall, but we both did the deep inner work. It was low. I was stuck. I was lost. And what the first for exercise that I did, literally, I went through a really, really sad breakup, really got worst breakup I'll ever go through in my life. And 2 days after, I mean, I literally didn't get out of bed. I was sobbing. I got up and I got my computer and I wrote down I was also leaving venture capital, which is the industry I was in for 7 years. So I was leaving my job and going through a big breakup, all of it at the same time. I took a rough page of my notes app and I wrote down everything that I love, from my favorite friends to my favorite movies to walking in the woods when it's 55 degrees and there's leaves on the ground and I'm going to go home and bake cookies. I painted days, I painted moments, my favorite coffee, my favorite mug, my favorite workout, just as long as I could go. And I called the list healing and I returned to it over and over and over again. And it literally guided me back home to myself.
I'm obsessed with that. I feel like we were talking about this stuff at the same time, but I kind of found that by accident. Like I realized the things that I liked and I was letting the question of what would feel good right now guide me because I was like, I just need to feel better. And so it was like moment to moment, like what would feel just a little bit better right now. And I sort of ended up with my joy list. But for me, my big thing was journaling. If anyone listening to this is a writer, or even if you're not a writer, there is the dialogue you're able to have with yourself while journaling, especially if your brain moves a mile a minute. I definitely feel like mine does. I talk so fast. Physically writing forces you to slow down. And the questions that I asked myself were, what do I want? Like on a soul level, what do I want? And that revealed things like we were talking about at the very beginning, connection. I want to make the world a better place. It might sound corny, but like I do. I want to feel like I'm doing something meaningful and I'm proud of. And like I want to be around people who inspire me and all of those things. And then the other flip side I talked about earlier was, what am I so afraid of? Because I was paralyzed by fear and I didn't know from where. And I now, I told you about the financial fear, but I was also so afraid of people laughing at me. Like I was afraid of trying something and being laughed at or like failing in some way. And when I really got to the root of that, I was like, I don't actually care about that. That's okay if they do that. It's worth it to me if they do that. But until I was able to connect with that fear, write about it, it was just the fear itself, the emotion of fear in the body was keeping me stuck, even though my logical brain wouldn't have accepted that. And so when you journal, you can actually journaling is a way of moving those emotions through you. And I mean, we would not be sitting here today if I hadn't filled multiple journals this fall.
It also is really good for detoxing. I journal every morning. I word vomit and then gratitude. And it is just like this like emotional cleanse. And it helps you just like make sense of things. Journaling is such, I feel like everybody should journal and sit with their breath every day as just like mental hygiene, emotional hygiene.
And go outside.
Go outside, which is what I'm gonna do right now. It's sunny and 60 in Boston. I'm so
I
excited.
like the phrase, I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast before, but one of my favorite phrases is never trust an inside thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're having a dark, spooky thought inside, go outside, go for a walk, and then see if that thought still applies.
Really good. Going outside, I literally think it's the best thing you can do for your house. It's amazing. It's amazing. All right. Well, we will see everybody next Tuesday. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Okay. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment to pause and notice where it's sitting within you.
Living in alignment is not about fixing yourself or becoming someone new. It's about listening, trusting, and slowly coming home to who you already are.
Thank you for spending this time with us and for being part of this community.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might resonate with it too. See you next time.